Well, if you clicked on this video, then I suggest that you want to identify the 5 things that school probably didn't teach you about money. And without further ado, let's just zoom straight into the first thing, which is that savings wouldn't make you rich. And anytime that I say this, people just look at me in a weird way. But the truth is that, you have to break it down in order for you to actually understand what I mean when I tell you that savings wouldn't make you rich. There is a component in economics called inflation. Now, inflation is generally the rise in the prices of goods and services within an economy. So holding all other factors constant, the more you save, you're likely also to become financially stable. However, because inflation actually reduces your money or the value of your money over time within an economy, it makes it difficult for your money to retain the purchasing power or the potency. So for example, if you were able to purchase 5 apples at £1 and inflation kicks in, let's say 20%, you're likely to lose the number of apples that you'll be able to purchase with £1. And that simply means that the money that you're saving over time loses its purchasing power or the potency. So you're losing money without even knowing. And that is why it's very difficult for you to build wealth through saving. So what you want to do is that anytime you save, try as much as possible and then invest a portion of it. Investing a portion of your savings would go on to shield your money against inflation and subsequently push you towards the attainment of your financial goals at the end of the year. This brings us to the second point, which is that money loves speed. Instead of saving, like I've said in the earlier point, what you have to do is to invest your money so that it can actually gain some returns over time to shield you against the concept of inflation. So what you want to do instead is that you want to utilize the power of compound interest. And compound interest simply goes on to return a portion of your initial investment over a stipulated time. That is, if you go on to put money in any investment vehicle out there. For example, if it is in stocks or REIT or any other savings that actually gain some form of return over the long run, what you want to do is that you need to utilize the power of compound interest, and you need to start doing that very early. So for example, if you are 20 years old and you start investing $100 every month, by the time you're 60, you'd probably be a millionaire. However, if you're to wait 10 years more, that is, if you start investing at 30, then you'd probably have to save 3 times more than your initial savings in order for you to become a millionaire by 60. So that is it. The compound interest effect on money is something that should be utilized in order for you to build wealth. And that is something that school never taught us. Well, for me, I was fortunate enough because the very first degree that I obtained was in finance and insurance. And then my second degree was in business finance. That is my master's degree. So all these concepts are not new to me. However, there's millions of people out there that probably never came across these concepts, except probably videos like this one. And that is why I find it very needful to share some insights more into things that we're doing wrongly that we might not even be aware of. This might sound a little bit controversial. However, your job won't make you rich. And that is, it's very difficult to convince people, when you tell them that it's very difficult for you to make wealth or to build wealth in the long run with your 9 to 5. In a recent study, over 60% of all Americans earning over $100,000 at the end of the year actually said that they were living paycheck to paycheck. And that is no different from what is happening with the people that are in the bottom as well. It is very difficult for you to build wealth or for you to sustain yourself in the long run, living and expecting a paycheck at the end of the month. On average, millionaires have at least 7 streams of income, and that fortifies them against any unforeseen circumstances or any financial turmoil that would likely strike in the near future. What you have to do instead is to find several ways that you can earn money aside your 9 to 5. So for example, if you have a skill, you can go on and then sell that skill through freelancing apps like Upwork or Fiverr. And then anytime you do that, what you're doing is that you're diversifying your income streams away from your 9 to 5. And as a result of that, if you go on to do all these things, then you're diversifying your income streams, and then you're fortifying yourself also against the unforeseen circumstance that is likely to strike in the event of right sizing or downsizing by your employer. This brings us to the fourth point, which is leverage. And that simply means that debt is a tool for you to build wealth, and not, what we've been traditionally programmed to believe, that debt is something that is bad. It depends also on what you do with the debt there's bad debt and there's good debt as well. If you go on to purchase assets, getting into debt and then purchasing assets, then you're rest assured that that asset would in the near future return or bring in some form of income to offset that debt. However, if you go on to purchase liabilities in the guise of assets, and then you go on to, try as much as possible to make yourself happy by purchasing or taking on all these debts through the credit card payments and all that, then it makes it very difficult for you in the near future to offset this debt. And that leads to stress and financial constraints in the future. So, what you want to know is that debt is not bad, as we've been traditionally programmed to believe. You can use debt to your advantage. There are several multimillionaires and billionaires out there who borrow money from people through the stock market and through loans from the banks and all that. They build assets, they build companies, they build things that are likely to bring them returns to offset that debt that they initially took on. And it's very easy for you to build stuff like that, taking a critical look at where you stand currently and then assessing where your money is going. It is very easy if you sit down to iterate every single thing that you've purchased, for example, over the last couple of weeks, and then ascertain whether or not the things that you really purchased were likely to bring in some form of money or they were actually taking money out of your pocket. If they were bringing money into your pocket or they had the potential of bringing some amount of income in the future, then they are assets. However, if they consistently take money out of your pocket, then those are liabilities and you want to shy away from them in order to protect your finances. Now, this brings us to the last point, which is budgeting. Most people believe that budgeting is a form of restriction, but contrary to that, what budgeting actually is that it makes sure that you position yourself or you discipline yourself to make the required or the necessary or the essential purchases, and that also positions you in a better way towards the attainment of your goals. Budgeting makes it easier for you to track where your money is going. And that is very, very important because what people tend to do is that they tend to be clouded by the ostrich effect, which simply means that they hide away or shy away from their financial responsibilities. So, for example, after spending so much on the weekend, people are likely not to open their banking apps because they are likely to see the things that they purchased which they didn't need to purchase in the first place. So that is what people tend to do. It is very difficult for you to sustain yourself if you don't have a budget that you live by. And the budget is not restricting you negatively, like we were made to believe. A budget can also ensure that instead of you going out there to just spend on anything that you see, you actually discipline yourself to get the essentials. And more often than not, I go on to advise people that it is necessary for you to incorporate some form of fun in your budget because that would liberate you and empower you to desist from thinking that a budget is meant to restrict you or it should stand between you and your joy or your happiness at the end of the day. Thank you.